Out fantasy football show here. John Impemba with Andrew Cooper coming live here on a Wednesday. Coop, this week we start our team by team previews. We are kicking it off with the AFC East, breaking down the Bills, Jets, Patriots, and Dolphins. Got a lot of OTA news. Got potential DeAndre Hopkins news up in the air that we want to talk about today. A lot going on. We're going to touch on the NFL futures betting market as we have some of those lines out there, team win totals, you name it. We're covering it here over the next couple of weeks. My guy, how are we doing?
I'm doing fantastic because everyone that's been with us all along, you've done the hard work. Like we've done the shows where you have to do the building blocks, right? We talk about before the draft, what's going on, after the draft, how that affects everything. Now everything's coming together. We're getting actual practices, actual football. The Hall of Fame game's right around the corner.
Right.
So, and a team that we're talking about today is playing in it. So now we get into the fun stuff where we're actually doing real drafts, talking about these divisions, breaking them down. And then before you know it, it'll be July, August. Drafts will be firing on all cylinders, John. So this is the fun time, man. We put in the hard work, and here we are.
Yeah, 100% here. Why don't we talk about kicking it off? Everybody who's tuning in here today, again, if you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, make sure you join that. You can look at the scroll down at the bottom. Go to fantasyalarm.com/all-pro. Promo code NFL50 will get you 50% off the first 6 months here. Also gets you access to our premium Discord where our guy Andrew Cooper's in there. Answer a ton of fantasy football questions. He's got the Coop Corner. He's got the Fantasy Football Best Ball channel in there. You can see the QR code on the screen. If you're not yet a member over on Underdog, you can sign up there using promo code Fantasy Alarm. You get a 100% deposit match. Or we got a whole bunch of best ball drafts going on with the family. And even better, you get a 7-day free trial when you sign up as well. So no better time than now to join the family. The NFL Draft Guide is coming out soon. So you get in now. You get the Draft Guide as well as part of this deal. So really just an awesome time to become part of the Fantasy Alarm family, Coop.
That's the beautiful thing about that is you get the 7-day free trial. You can peek behind the curtain, get in the Discord quick, check it out. You can do one of the best ball drafts with us, be part of the family, see what it feels like. If you like it, hang around. If not, you know what? It's not for everybody, but we have a blast in there. You get to see all the tools that are behind the paywall. You get all the sports, honestly, with that one. It's not just football. You'll get the rest of the baseball season. You'll get, the rest of this,
NBA,
Stanley
NHL,
Cup Finals, NBA,
PGA,
PGA, all
big
that
PGA
stuff.
news yesterday. The U.S. Open's next week. The RBC Canadian Open is tomorrow. That playbook's already out. You'll get access to that. Obviously, Nat Sells and the NASCAR DFS content is out there. Busch with Kyle Busch with the win last week. So
that's my boy too, Kyle Busch. And Nat Sells won 3 out of 4 of the last FSWA awards for the best NASCAR
racing writer of the year. So
we're kind of burying the lead on that. Like he is the best NASCAR.
Yeah, he is the
best.
best.
So that at all, you have to be getting
a whole lot to do here over at Fantasy Time. So sign up today. You get a nice $19.98 a month for the first 6 months. So no better time than join. And if you're tuning in today with Coop and I, you want to ask us some questions, feel free. Type them into the chat, send us them in Discord, get us over on Twitter. We'll be here to interact with all of you guys for the next hour. But Coop, with that said, let's kick it off here. And why don't we start with our New England Patriots here? Listen, are we homers? Maybe a little bit. But the Patriots coming off of a tough year, 8-9 last season. Their best free agent ad this year. We have Juju Smith-Schuster, maybe the best ad as a player, but is Bill O'Brien maybe the best addition to the Patriots this year? That is certainly to be discussed.
Easily.
Damian Harris was the top lost player. Again, moving on over to Buffalo, we'll touch on him. Best draft pick. Patriots didn't really go offense. They do have a late round wide receiver. Maybe we can touch on that. Had some pretty interesting potential there during his early college days, but they took Christian Gonzalez to help shore up that defense in a division where, well, you need some quarterback play with the way the offenses are here in the AFC East. We got the Vegas win total, unfortunately, set at just 7.5 wins here. Patriots worst odds to win the AFC East at plus 800, and their Super Bowl odds, Coop, plus $6,500. So let's kick it off here, Coop. Let's talk about some of the big news surrounding the New England Patriots here so far in OTAs.
Yeah, and I'll also add Mac Jones, same Super Bowl odds. So the Super Bowl odds are plus 6,500. Mac Jones has the same odds to win the MVP. So if you are a true believer, I mean, you can make some scratch there. Just betting on both those. I mean, you might as well, hey, if you're going to bet for them to win the Super Bowl, you might as well double down.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not going there. The thing about being a Patriots homer is that, like anyone else, we root for the team. But because of the way this team's operated for 20 years, it's easy to be unbiased in fantasy football, right? Like for the most part, they spread the ball around. That's the mantra.
Yeah.
The next man up situation. Obviously, Tom Brady and Gronk, and for a while, guys like Edelman and Wes Welker. Obviously, you're in on them, but it's
Mhm.
difficult to say, "Hey, I'm just going to draft Patriots because I love them," when there's not really those options. I will say, with a guy like Wes Welker, last time Bill O'Brien was with the team, 2007 to 2011. In 2011, he was calling the plays, and Wes Welker got absolutely peppered. Led the league in targets. He had, I think, he had like 1,300 yards. So I mean, if they want to try and recreate that type of offense, that's Juju Smith-Schuster. That's the role he's stepping into. We know the floor for him is at least a Jacoby Myers type situation where he's going
Right.
to play some in the slot, some on the outside. So he's kind of interesting. I mean, going off the board at ADP 100. I'll hit the ADPs real quick so
Sure.
people get an idea. Ramondre Stevenson, and these are based on underdog best ball. It's kind of the best look we have right now at these. So Ramondre Stevenson going ADP 28, RB 10 overall. Juju going red rumble 100, wide receiver 50. Tyquan Thornton going 169, wide receiver 75. Mike Gesicki 193, tight end 24. Mac Jones 206, QB 30. So
Yeah.
he's basically free.
Not being drafted. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Hunter Henry, James Robinson, Devontae Parker. If you want them with your last pick, you can have them. Like it's 216 picks in the draft. They go around 214, 215. So
Yeah.
you want them, they're yours.
Interesting spots on James Robinson. I don't want to spend a lot of time on him, but that next running back is going to be quite interesting. We've seen reports that Kevin Harris had been getting some early work behind Ramondre Stevenson. You've talked about Ty Montgomery looking really good at camp, and a lot of reports coming out that Montgomery maybe is coming through here as maybe reclaiming that third down back role here. And Robinson signed a 2-year deal. So, and he was coming out talking about how he was feeling great catching the football. He's maybe one of the best receivers out there, yada, yada, yada. So, that late round draft pick at running back behind New England could be an interesting spot.
Yeah, I think so. Ramondre, you feel pretty good about him, even if they're going to split it up a little bit. So he's pretty safe pick. Juju, to me, feels like a pretty safe pick. After that, the real question is, are we going to get a Kevin Falk role, a James White type player that actually gets a reasonable number of targets? And who's it going to be? So, like you said, James Robinson could be in the mix. I kind of like taking a stabs on Ty Montgomery, to be honest. Last year, week 1, he played 20 snaps, got 4 targets, ended up getting hurt, missing the season. But I'm hearing some rumblings. Ivan Fears, who I actually used to play high school football with his son, he is retired now, but he came out and said, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was in that role. And we know that at times that can be a pretty lucrative
Right.
role for fantasy football. James White was an RB1. When James White was in the league, the span that he played, no running back had more receptions than he did during that span. So, and that overlaps with the period that Bill O'Brien was here. So
Right.
that's one question. The second question, John, this is one I want to ask you. Pretty much everybody believes that Juju is going to lead this team in targets. Last year, it was actually Ramondre Stevenson that was second. But if you were going to pick from some of these other options, Tyquan Thornton, Mike Gesicki, any of these other guys, who would you take a stab on? Devontae Parker in the mix?
Yeah.
Kendrick Bourne?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think if healthy, Devontae Parker, him and Mac Jones have shown a decent connection in the past. He and Juju shouldn't clash all that much when it comes to where they are on the field. But there is those reports coming out about Tyquan Thornton, about just like the separation that he is getting right now in OTAs, and how just the steps it seem like he's taken from year 1 to year 2. Again, they used a second round pick. He was the fastest guy in the draft by far last year. And if you do get Bill O'Brien, and what was one of the biggest complaints last year about the Patriots offense, they took no shots downfield. They were throwing short passing games, dink and dunk. You had that quote about Mac Jones where we all think he was basically screaming the short game isn't working. Like, let's go long, let's throw downfield. And Bill O'Brien may be coming in here to implement more of a downfield passing offense where a guy like Devontae Parker excels as a contested catch guy, and Tyquan Thornton is a downfield burner. So, yeah, I think there's some interesting spots there. And the Mike Gesicki ad, we talked about Juju maybe being their best sign. That they're talking a lot of the big reports, and you've mentioned it. And Gesicki's, had that quote of calling himself like big wide receiver day. Like they're going to utilize him in that big slot role.
Yeah, Alec Barth, he works with the Sports Hub. Great beat writer. I really enjoy listening to him and Evan Lazar, guys like that, because they're they don't pull any punches. They're just very honest in their reporting of it, which can't be said for guys across the league and also in Boston. John, there's a lot of guys that like to stir the pot here in Boston. These guys aren't pot stirrers. They bring you the facts. And he actually combed through a bunch of the old transcripts of Bill Belichick talking about Mike Gesicki from because he has them all from being a reporter, and he pulled like 8 or 9 different instances where a reporter said, "What do you think about tight end Mike Gesicki?" And Bill Belichick started his sentence by saying, "Well, he's more of a big wide receiver." Right? That's how Bill Belichick views this player. That's how he was used, especially by Shane Gailey. And now Bill Belichick has him, and we know that that's what Mike Gesicki wants. So Mike Gesicki, as a free agent, chose to come to this team, to a coach that's called him a wide receiver on multiple occasions. What does that tell you, John?
Right.
Especially when you have a guy like Hunter Henry that clearly profiles as more of an inline, better blocker. I think Mike Gesicki is going to be the slot wide receiver for this team. So for me, I look around, Tyquan Thornton, obviously very interesting, especially in best ball. But I look around and I say, okay, if Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki get the same number of targets, who's more valuable? The guy that has tight end eligibility. So that's where I'm going. I'm definitely taking a little bit of Gesicki here and there. He's tight end 24, so who cares?
Right. Now let's talk a little bit about the free agent rumors rumbling around. DeAndre Hopkins is a big
Yes.
name, and he's linked to at least 2 teams, if not more, in this division as it is. He has that connection with Bill Belichick. We got the sound clip last year when they were in Arizona, him going up to Bill being like, I wish I could play for you. That sort of narrative floats about. Of course, Bill O'Brien was the man who traded him from Houston, and they did not have that great relationship there. Now, Bill O'Brien's come out since and said, I would love to coach DeAndre Hopkins again, because why wouldn't you, as an offensive coordinator getting back in the NFL, want a great player? What are your feelings on the actual viability of him landing in New England?
Yep.
And how would you think he would fit in this offense?
I remember that exact interaction between Bill and DeAndre Hopkins. And Bill, it was the year that Hopkins started the year suspended. And Bill went to him and he said, good to see you back out here. You might still lead the league in receiving yards. And Hopkins did the thing he always does where he goes, yeah, I know. You know
Right.
what I mean? But there's clearly mutual respect between those two. But I think, the Bill O'Brien thing, that needs to be hammered out first. These guys are adults, they're veterans. I don't think that means it's not possible, but I think it would be more possible easily if that wasn't the case. And the other part is that DeAndre Hopkins kind of laid out in a interview what he wants, and he was like, "I want an elite defense," which Patriots solid defense. Then he listed the quarterbacks he's looking for, and he also wants to potentially win a Super Bowl. I don't know if adding DeAndre Hopkins all of a sudden makes the Patriots even third.
It'll adjust their odds a little bit for sure, because
If
Bill Belichick's getting an elite play, and the idea that Bill O'Brien is going to benefit this offense a little bit more. But right, it's not going to make them an immediate favorite, but
That's
it
what I'm
should give
saying.
them a little bit more of a leg up than plus 6,500.
They're plus 800 to win the division. The next closest team, I don't want to give anything away, but the next closest odds are plus 300.
Yeah.
I don't think adding DeAndre Hopkins moves them even into the third best odds to win the division.
No, but I bet they moved to like plus 500. I bet they moved from 8 to 5, something like that there.
Yeah. What,
Um,
what what essentially happens if Hopkins comes in is it removes it vaporizes Devontae Parker and it vaporizes Juju Smith-Schuster. He immediately becomes a starting split end. So you have him at split end. Juju is on the other side. So you have him at split end, Hunter Henry at inline tight end, right? Those are your two tethered players. And then you have Juju out wide and Gesicki in the slot. And
mhm.
those guys, Juju's probably a full-time player. Gesicki ends up being the guy that rotates with,
Sure.
with Tyquan Thornton and Kendrick Bourne, whoever else. So it basically would go from this spot where we're taking all these dart throws on who's going to be second to knowing who's first and second to some degree, and everybody else goes on the back burner. That's
I got
that.
Mark
That's
Pitts
where we're at.
chiming in. They didn't win with Randy Moss, which is true. Best team in the
Oh my,
best team in
yeah.
the world did not win with Randy Moss. That is true. Didn't
They
happen.
but Tom Brady set the record for at the time the record for touchdown passes, and Randy Moss set the
A
record.
common misconception there too is that Tom Brady in that Super Bowl got them the lead. He drove them down the field, connected with Randy Moss, got the lead, and then the Patriots defense is the one that ultimately lost the Super Bowl. So people can look at Tom Brady losing Super Bowls all they want. Both of those games against the Giants, he brought them down, gave them the lead, and then they ended up losing out there. Let's cue on over to the next team that is connected with DeAndre Hopkins, and actually currently Vegas odds at plus 300 to land him. That is the Buffalo Bills here. Buffalo last year, 13-3. They added Damian Harris this offseason. They lost Devin Singletary. They drafted Dalton Kincaid. They have a Vegas win total at 10.5. They're the favorites to win the AFC East at plus 115, and they are right up there among the best teams to win the Super Bowl at plus 900.
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction to this offseason is they've made quite the bet here, right? They clearly believe in Josh Allen, and they're going the way that the Chiefs do to a certain degree, and also what the Patriots did for a long time, which was say, hey, we have this quarterback, let's spend our money elsewhere and hope that he can just elevate some of these other guys. Obviously, they went to get Stephon Diggs, but I thought this team was going to go out and get a premier wide receiver, either via the draft or via free agency if possible. There wasn't a lot out there, or via trade, which they've done in the past. They didn't do that. Instead, they drafted a tight end in the first round. They did trade up to get him, but that's putting a lot of faith in this player. Their window to win is open right now, right? Stephon Diggs going to be 30 soon. So interesting maneuvers by them, John. Do you think, first of all, do you think they already had a team that was capable of winning? And do you think they've done enough so far to win the Super Bowl?
I think they need somebody else when Stephon Diggs is taken out of the game, right? He's obviously an elite receiver. Josh Allen is more than capable of making the players around him better and winning games on his own. But, Gabriel Davis is such a hit or miss at times because of the type of player that he is. It's not that he's not a good player, but his role isn't to get open when Stephon Diggs is double covered. It's to run straight down the field and catch a long pass. So they needed somebody, and I still don't know if they necessarily have that guy to be the next guy to get open and to make that play. That's why I thought Cole Beasley was so good for them.
Right.
Or took Cole Beasley 2 years ago was so good for them because he was a guy that could just get open in the slot, find the open space, be the guy that Josh Allen can throw to when Diggs is covered, because they kind of complemented each other route wise. Maybe Kincaid comes in and plays that slot role and can do some of those same things because he's not a downfield vertical threat. But that's what I think that offense needs a little bit.
Yeah, I would. It's just these top heavy teams. I worry. We watched it for years with the Steelers, right? Where they could have won the Super Bowl in any given year. They had Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. Those were the big dogs. And one of those guys got hurt virtually every year. And then they were just out. Like with this team, you're cutting it so thin with if you lose Diggs or Josh Allen, it's over, right?
Yeah.
So like they're cutting it very thin. I think they're really hoping that Dalton Kincaid can immediately step in and play that, just be a bigger version of what Cole Beasley was, right? So I look at these ADPs, Diggs, first round pick, right? And, given how heavily they lean on him, I have no problem with him at wide receiver 5, ADP 7 overall.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen, second round pick, going QB3 off the board. Again, the mobility, there's no substitute for it. He
Right.
basically gives you the passing of Kirk Cousins and the rushing of like Aaron Jones, right? So no misses there. After that, again, it's another spot where you got to stake your claim. You got Gabe Davis going 78 overall, wide receiver 40, and then Dalton Kincaid going ADP 124, tight end 11, and then Khalil Shakur, another guy that could potentially be in the slot, ADP 195, wide receiver 83. So he's deep out there. For me personally, I look at it, it's the same situation with Gesicki there. I look at Gabe Davis and Dalton Kincaid, and to me, I don't even know if Gabe Davis is going to get more targets than Dalton Kincaid.
Right.
So give me the guy with tight end eligibility. It's so much more valuable. Anytime it's where I can look at it, and if it's close, like even if Gabe Davis gets slightly more targets than Kincaid, he's the more valuable asset because that eligibility. So for me, I'm not really taking much Gabe Davis. I wasn't last year either. But ADP wide receiver 40, a lot more reasonable than it was last year too, John. Are you going there at all in best ball or at any point?
I do have some Gabe Davis because of, I've been in spots where Josh Allen had just fallen, where I didn't take Stephon Diggs, but Allen was just kind of going towards the end of the second in some drafts. Like, all right, like I'll just grab the best quarterback in best ball right now, take him, and then see what I can pair him up with. So I actually do have a Allen Davis Kincaid stack.
I actually did that too.
Yeah.
So I have actually taken them. But the old reverse engineered stack, right?
Yeah,
So
because
I
again,
have done that.
we talked about this when we were going over best ball positions here. The stacking is such a popular strategy that more often than not, those who grab Diggs make it an effort to grab Allen in the second round.
Right.
So unless you find yourself in a draft where someone goes, Diggs Adams or Diggs CD Lamb because they're at the end of the first, and now that person isn't in line to grab a Josh Allen there, Allen will fall a little bit because people are looking to stack. They're not looking to play a one-off Josh Allen for whatever reason. I
That's
don't mind doing it, but people don't. People are too ingrained with that. I have to get a stack. I have to find correlation. And usually I'm just out there like, I'll take the best player. Like, that's fine. Right. Like,
that's what's happening. And I think it actually might translate to redraft, John. Like it might carry all the way through where the first round you see Diggs go and you see Jamar Chase go and you see AJ Brown go. And the second round comes around and you see Travis Kelce go, right? So Travis Kelce, AJ Brown, and Diggs go in the first round. And in the second round, you see Mahomes, Josh Allen, and
Jalen Hurts.
and Jalen Hurts getting stacked with those guys, right? And then what happens after that? Well, the guys that draft Jamar Chase and the guys that draft T. Higgins start looking around and saying,
Joe
"Hey,
Burrow's there, yeah.
quarterbacks are getting drafted. Why don't I do my stack too?" That's what's moving these guys all the way up. And it's happening in best ball. It could continue all the way into redraft season. So I don't know. I'm weary of following that path, especially in redraft where it's a different beast. You
Yeah.
can find guys quarterbacks on waivers. Right?
We've been so used to, really only having like that 1 second round quarterback, right? Like Mahomes would be up there. And then the next group would be kind of in round 4, right? So you can kind of set your skill position players. And then you'd find that, like, going back a couple of years, you'd have like Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, like that whole crew in round 4. But now that's not the case. The top end quarterbacks are being pushed into round 2 and 3. You have Justin Herbert and like Trevor Lawrence kind of sitting there in like 4 and 5. And then you can go back a few rounds and find some of those other guys there. But different quarterback strategy this year because, like you mentioned, stacking is just so prevalent now these days.
And the other part of it is this team is one of the ones that's most guilty of it. And we can get into this topic now of what's pushing running backs down,
Yeah.
right? And this is what's pushing the wide receivers up and the quarterbacks up, not necessarily the tight ends, but running backs are being pushed down by the setup of this exact team, where you have a split backfield between one guy who's clearly an early down back in Damian Harris and a smaller pass down type back in James Cook, and you have a mobile quarterback that's soaking up a ton of the taking carries for himself, not dumping it down. It pushes all those running backs down. It's happening with the Eagles, clearly, where they have just a mess at running back. At the Bears, it's very difficult to pick Donta Foreman.
Their running backs suck. 2,
Right.
they have a quarterback that's going to run for 1,500 yards. So
yeah, so when you take all these teams just out of the equation, it's pushing those running backs down there. So
Jalen Hurts last year had 20 carries inside the 5, second most in football behind Jamal Williams. So.
Insane, yeah, and like so the fact that Miles Sanders was able to produce and that team was dead last in targeting the running back out of the backfield. In fact, you look at the 3 teams that were the bottom teams in running back total targets, it was the Eagles, the Bears, and the Ravens. What do those teams have in common? It's these mobile quarterbacks. So yeah, in this situation, John, are you finding yourself taking Damian Harris or James Cook at all? James Cook right now goes off the board right around pick 100, RB 30. Damian Harris goes 116, RB 39. So they're both being drafted in every league. And, if you're in a regular league, pick 120 is 10 rounds. So virtually every single league you're in, real life redraft leagues, these guys are going to be drafted as well. So
I've been taking some James Cook, as my RB5, RB6 kind of when I'm going in that range here, because I do think he's the more explosive player. And I think we saw some of that last year where, I was someone that had Devin Singletary in a lot of leagues. And there was a period of time where he was losing early down work to James Cook because of the offense that the Bills run. Where do they run? They run a pass-heavy offense. So they're not generally looking to line it up and hand it off. And that's where Damian Harris is, you call him an early down back. In a traditional offense, he certainly is. When they get in red zone, maybe you find him out there, for those goal line plunges. But like you mentioned, Josh Allen's generally taking those as well. James Cook, I think, depending on what his pass blocking could be, I mean, you're the one that kind of dives into the PFF pass blocking numbers there, but Devin Singletary, as you mentioned, it was a really good pass blocker. He moved on to Houston. One of the reasons why you were curious about Dameon Pierce, and now you have the reports coming out that Dameon Pierce is improving on pass blocking and working on his catching. I saw your tweet that went out there, but that spot's now gone. If James Cook can fill in that role, there may be a spot where, sure, Damian Harris is the lead running back, but James Cook is playing more.
Right. And James Cook, I mean, he carved up the Patriots last year. And even with Damian Harris as the goal line back, it's not just about Josh Allen taking himself and running himself. That RPO is an extension of the run game. And anytime when they run it, Josh Allen pulls it back and then he just flips it over to Dawson Knox or Gabriel Davis. That's another one that should go to the running back. It happens with the Chiefs too, where they run that shovel pass and it's basically a run play. Well, those are opportunities that should go to the running back. Like if you look at the Lions, they all went to Jamal Williams. That's how he scored 17 touchdowns. If you put Jamal Williams on this team, he's not scoring all those touchdowns because they use that to their advantage. So Damian Harris guy, I'm probably staying away from. James Cook, I just think that, he's interesting enough, but there's so many guys in similar situations that I either like better or cheaper. Like I feel like I can't take James Cook over Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Playing with a non-mobile quarterback that's going to dump it down, and they're missing one of their wide receivers. Like it's tough for me to look at it and say that I'm going crazy for any of these guys. One guy, so I am drafting Diggs. I'm drafting Josh Allen. I'm drafting Dalton Kincaid, and personally, that's about it.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. I mean, again, if you want to go super deep in best ball, you take a shot on Shakir, right? Maybe Gabe Davis goes down, or Shakir kind of steps up, and they find a spot for him. But he's primarily a special teamer, returner for them. So really just going deep dive. But yeah, there's not much else here. I do want to get your thoughts just on some of their future betting lines here.
Yeah.
We didn't do this for New England, but we'll do it for now. Maybe we'll spin back around for the Patriots. But over under 10.5 wins for you.
Yeah, so I like the over on that. This is a team that I believe in the team's ability to beat, the Patriots, the Jets, the Dolphins, a lot of the teams on their schedule. When I talk about the Super Bowl, I just worry that they're a little too thin to make a deep playoff run, and that you got to win those games back to back to back and not have injuries, right? Like, so I can see this team throughout the season overcoming injuries and getting it done, but I don't mind betting the over under, but I'm not putting money on them to win the Super Bowl. That's where I'm at.
What about Josh Allen at plus 800 for the MVP?
Yeah, I mean,
quarterbacks generally win the award. So
I know they do. I mean, it's crazy. If you look at go on like DraftKings, for instance, and look at the MVP odds, there's basically only one position player that's not a quarterback that has odds under plus 10,000. And can you guess who that is, John?
Not off the top of my head. It's
Christian
probably
McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey. Okay. McCaffrey, he's like plus 8,000. But even Mac Jones has better odds than Christian McCaffrey. That's how hard it is. And take the best wide receivers, they're all 10,000 or higher. Stephon Diggs, for instance, from this team, plus 10,000. Oh, sorry, he's plus 15,000. That's where Diggs sits, right? So it's like brutal there. I'm willing to bet on this team to win the division. You're still getting plus odds, which I find odd. I would, if I was setting this line, I'd set it like minus 130, John.
Right.
But I mean, hey, that's Aaron Rodgers, and the Dolphins are looking pretty good too. So that's what's driving that. But I mean, I feel like it's a nice little easy bet. $100, get $100.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
Swing it back to Patriots real quick, because again, we didn't talk about their over under. Would you go over 7.5?
Yeah, 7.5. Man, I honestly felt that was kind of high. Like that line is 100% entirely respect to Bill Belichick, right? Because you look at these other teams in the division,
they win a division game.
They're all killers, man. So I don't know if they're going to win any of those. Yeah, and we got to go play overseas. We're playing the Chiefs on Monday night. There's a lot of games they could lose there. So I actually kind of like the under there, even as a Patriots fan. Like personally, I'm going to root against it. But hey, John, I hate to admit it, we made money betting on the Heat, right? Like you have to take the.
I told you what to do.
I know. I know. I was
Taking
like
money line. If they lose, great. The Celtics move on. If they win, at least he made some money off of it. So
crying at the $100 bills. And what, like, I personally don't bet that often. I bet when I truly believe. Like, I'm not somebody that's going to sit here and say, "Hey, there's baseball today, so we have to put in 5 bets." I'm
right.
going to give you ones I care about. Like, I'm not going to bet on Mac Jones. I'm not going to bet on them to win the division. Obviously, not the Super Bowl, and I would consider the under. But there's not a lot of bets here that I love making.
Yep, I agree with you. Let's go on here. Miami Dolphins talk about here next. They went 8-9-8 last year. Obviously, they were on pace to be potentially better. They had those quarterback injuries there to Tua. Best add, they really didn't add a bunch of impact
No,
players in free agency. So went David Long, who's their highest paid player and linebacker there. They lost Mike Gesicki. Best draft pick, third round, Devin A-Chain here. Vegas totals at 9.5, wins at -105. Their AFC East odds are second best at +300, and their Super Bowl odds here sitting at +$2,200.
yeah, man, I like so this is another one where I like go through it. I don't like betting them to win the Super Bowl necessarily, but over 9.5, like I think all these AFC East teams, like in our mind, you feel like they can't all be good, but in the modern NFL and the way it's set up with all these playoff spots, they can all make the playoffs. It used to be only one team that didn't win their division made the playoffs, right? But now it's two. So you could easily have three
Right.
teams from one division make it. So I don't mind making those bets. Tua for MVP well, actually, should we talk fantasy first or talk betting first, John? What do you like?
Let's talk fantasy first. That's been the reign we've gone through here.
Yeah. Okay. So what I love about this team for fantasy football is first of all, no changes. That's a good thing, right? We want at the top of the drafts, we want certainty. We want
Mhm.
to know, right? We want Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey, the way it used to be, right? With this team, when they make no changes, that's a good thing because we know they're going to use a fullback, Alec Ingold. They used him just like Kyle Juszczyk, where Mike McDaniel came from. He played like 40% of the snaps. They know where he's going to play a ton. Every time you have that guy come on the field, you're not taking out Tyreek Hill. You're not taking out Jalen Waddle. You're not taking out the running back or the tight end because you're bringing the guy in to give a run look. You're taking out that extra wide receiver. That's why Cedric Wilson, these guys didn't really matter. And that's great. I don't care. The same with the 49ers. They've never really had a wide receiver 3. It's because of the fullback. It's because how they operate. I want all the targets to be highly consolidated among Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So I'll consider Tyreek Hill in the first, but I love waiting and taking Waddle in the second.
Mhm.
Right? I wrote the article on it. You can find it at fantasyalarm.com. Jalen Waddle. If you just Google fantasy alarm Jalen Waddle, it should come up. They took him from a slot wide receiver with a 7-yard A dot, moved him outside into the Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk role in this offense. Now he has a 12-yard average depth of target. He doesn't need to get 150 targets
Right.
to have huge upside. He actually got less targets last year than he did his rookie year, and he had over 200 more yards. Like this guy is explosive. He can make crazy plays as we've seen, and he didn't even have his quarterback for a good chunk of the year last year.
Right.
So yeah, like give me Waddle, give me Tyreek Hill, John Tua. Are you worried at all? So he's going. Those guys are going first and
Yeah.
second round as they
Almost the
should.
same scenario as we had last year, though not as extreme. Tua last year was QB
Crazy.
17 when Waddle and Tyreek Hill were going where they were in drafts, and we had a long discussion like something is wrong here.
Right.
Either Tyreek and Waddle are too high, or Tua is far too low in drafts, and it turned out to be that Tua was going way too late in drafts here. I'm not worried about the concussions. Honestly, if they're giving him the green light, they see he's cleared to go. Then I'm going to trust that that's the case. What do we say, Coop? We're not doctors, right? If they're telling me a guy is healthy, then the guy is healthy to go out there and play, and I will play and make those decisions based off that information.
That's what I'm saying. And I look around at like the ADPs for some of these other guys, and it's just complete it's bias and it's stigma. Because Tua was in the news so much, there's this stigma that he, is going to get hurt, even though, when you look at the research on, you actually look into it, they suggest that you are more susceptible to concussions over the short term. Over the long term, there's not really a lot of data to prove that. I mean, I've got a couple sample sizes with Devontae Adams and Brandon Cooks who had 3 concussions earlier on and, you know, knock
Right.
on wood, hasn't really resurfaced, right? So I have no problem with that. I look around ADPs and some of these guys. Dallas Goedert's missed games every season for 4 years. George Kittle's missed games every season for 4 years. Mike Williams has missed games every season, 4 straight years. We go like Chris Godwin, 4 straight years. I'm not talking every season they're missing
Right.
games. And these guys are all going ahead of guys like, Tua. I even throw out like a Michael Thomas. It's like, when do we decide when we're going to play the Dr.
Right.
Fortune Teller game, John? Like, I'm personally, if they come out and tell me this guy's healthy, then I'm in. And Cameron Wolf just said the other day, he said, Mike McDaniel on Tua. This dude is everything you look for in a starting QB, raved about his professionalism, said that he's as consistent as anyone. And he's even going out and doing judo and all this stuff to trying to figure out if he can fall better. You know what I mean?
Tom Brady school of falling,
I mean, hey, he's probably doing some parkour, just jumping off buildings and tucking and rolling or whatever you got to do. I mean, the fact that he's even working to improve something that's kind of out of his control, I'm in, man. I'm
Yeah.
fully in. So yeah, if I get Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, then I immediately, stick a pin in Tua and say I'm gonna draft him a round or more ahead of where he's being picked. And I'm taking him anyway. I don't even care if I get those other guys because pick 100, QB 12, pick 100.
Yeah.
He was better than QB 12 last year when he was playing. So,
Yeah.
John, I'm in.
It's been hard for me to get to Tyreek Hill, even when I've been on the board to draft him, because I do feel like we're taking him at his absolute ceiling. And that's kind of where the struggle is for me now. If he does go out, he's gonna be it was the kind of the Cooper Cup argument a little bit, a couple of years ago where he's going 1 overall. Having to take Tyreek Hill at 4, it's like, is he gonna improve on what he did? Like, honestly, based off what he had last year, maybe slightly, because Tua missed some of those games. So, like, it feels very hard for them to be that efficient and for him to be that explosive again to be worthy of ADP 4. I can think he could finish as a top 5 wide receiver, but do you want to take a wide receiver there at that spot? So I haven't taken any Tyreek Hill, but I do have Jalen Waddle to a stacks for best ball.
I can't get past. It's like you almost have to decide if you want Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, for me to get Tyreek Hill, things have to go perfect in order the way that I have it, And same thing with Travis Kelce's in that question too. You got to decide if you want him or not.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill to me is a guy that, and this, we talk very serious about fantasy football all the time. He's a guy that I like taking in my like $20 family league where I'm like watching the game with my sister and my brother-in-law. And it's like, he's just a fun player to watch, right? Like if you're hanging out, like if you're that kind of fantasy player where you're just drafting fun players, obviously it's more fun to have Tyreek Hill than it is.
Yeah, the guy had multiple 200-yard receiving games.
Yeah,
right.
You're talking mad Josh. I mean, I think even on the logo, pull that back up. The logo, it's like we have that up there. He's throwing the peace sign at dudes, like he's doing backflips. Like it's a lot of fun, But in terms of going out of my way to get him at his 80, I mean, it's just you have to really be all in to take him in the top half of the draft, and I'm just not personally doing that.
I mean, he had 1,700 yards and 7 touchdowns last year, 120 catches. Like,
he's awesome.
Yeah, he was. That's it, right? He was awesome. There's a far more probability that he falls back a little bit than there is that he builds upon what he did. So, for me, again, I just feel like you're drafting him at his ceiling where he can still be a top 5, top 8 wide receiver. But is that going to pay off the ADP value? So I don't have any Tyreek Hill unless I've been in a spot where like he's fallen in the first round, but I haven't found that quite yet. So none for me. How are you approaching the running back situation though? Now you can finish a take if you got on Tyreek Hill or not, but how are you approaching the running backs?
Well, I was just going to say that. I was going to say the same thing, John. I was going to say I was going to intro the running backs by saying we can skip tight end here.
Yeah.
I was very surprised though I'll admit, because since we're recapping the offseason stuff, very surprised they didn't add a tight end, because this team, like Dalton Schultz, have been perfect for what they want to do, right? They want to do the 49ers offense with a two-way tight end. It just so turns out that D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Slowick also come from the 49ers, and they want to do that too, and they're doing it with the Texans, so they went and got Dalton Schultz. But I'm just surprised that they're going to roll Durham Smythe again. Maybe put Elijah Higgins in that Gesicki role, which is only like a 40% snap share anyway. So you can just avoid the tight ends here, to be honest. With the running backs, it's pretty wild, the decision-making that has to be done here. Raheem Mostert's a guy that he's fast. We know they like him. He gets hurt every year. He's the guy that I actually have been taking the most of at ADP, simply because we know they like him. We know what he's capable of. And there's an outside chance that, or not even outside chance, there's just a regular chance that the Dolphins brought in A-Chain to have a guy in case their guys get hurt like they did last year, but the intention is to use Mostert and use Jeff Wilson like they did. I
Yeah.
mean, we saw it we've seen it before with, we talk about this guy being a third round pick in the NFL draft. Justice Hill was a third round pick. Keyshawn Vaughn was a third round pick. And we fell for it then too. We thought, oh yeah, they picked this guy because they're going to use him. What if they pick this guy because they wanted depth behind the guys, right? They want another Raheem Mostert in case Raheem Mostert
They
gets
still
hurt.
have Myles Gaskins on their roster for whatever reason. So
They have all of those guys. They have Salvin Ahmed,
yeah.
and now people are trying to put Dalvin Cook on the team too. It's like, how many running backs does this team need?
Well, that's more so the reporting that they tried to trade for Dalvin
Right.
Cook. Now that was before the draft, right? And then they weren't able to execute on that trade, and then they drafted A-Chain here, and you got the report too. A-Chain adding weight. People were worried that he was a smaller back, and now the reports already he's up to like 192 pounds. People look at it and maybe they don't think 192 pounds is much there at 5'9", but any weight really at the NFL helps you a little bit in terms of your durability, right?
And there something I never thought of, John. Have you ever thought of this? When they asked him about adding the weight, he was like, it wasn't hard. And they were like, why? And he goes, because this guy flies. He was like the fastest running back in the draft. He was a track star. So he goes, every year in school, I would finish football and then we'd start track. I never had a chance to sit down and put on weight. In fact, you don't even want to, right? He's just running every day trying to win these track meets. So he never had an off season where he sat down and bulked up.
Yeah, NFL weight program, and he puts on 5 pounds like he snaps his fingers,
First week, yeah. And I never really thought about that. It's like these track guys never had the opportunity versus some of these other guys. Like, if a wide receiver comes in thin that doesn't do track, you wonder why, why he didn't put on muscle. But for this guy, he's got a built-in excuse, and he immediately delivered on it. So
right.
kind of love that. I love him in Dynasty.
4'3", 240. I know they don't play football in shorts and tank tops, but him and Tyreek Hill, good luck to any NFL team trying to keep track with those two guys.
And Mostert, who just a year ago had not only the fastest, but the two fastest on field speeds. So I love A-Chain in Dynasty. Don't get me wrong, because Mostert's like 30 years old, and Jeff Wilson's like 27. So these guys are already past the age apex. Like
I'm waiting more for training camp so we can just get clarity on how that rotation is gonna work out. And the best balls, we like to say, this is where you're playing your lottery tickets, right? You're just kind of picking one and hoping they hit at some point down the line in the season, even if they're not initially the starter. Maybe they find their way into just a week, right? All you got to have to do is hope this guy comes through for you once or twice during a best ball season, and he's fine. We have the benefit in redraft to not having to draft until the final week of the off season, and then we kind of know, okay, it's very clearly Raheem Mostert, and then it's this, and then it's that, or maybe they do make a move for Dalvin Cook, and we'll know where Leonard Fournette or Ezekiel Elliott land, and like puts more clarity, which is why we always say wait as long as you can for redraft leagues to draft your teams, and we'll know where to go.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, as we wrap up or move on to betting here, just don't be surprised. And this is for best ball at his ADP. Don't be surprised if Jeff Wilson scores double-digit touchdowns this year, because we expect this team to be good, and he's clearly the best. Like right now, if there's a pass, 40-yard pass to Tyreek Hill, and he gets dragged down the end zone, and it's pass interference, and they got to send a guy down there to punch that in. Tua with his concussion issues, I don't think they're doing that.
Right.
Obviously, Mostert and A-Chain, this guy's got 25, 30 pounds on these guys, even with the added muscle. I mean, Jeff Wilson's just, 6 foot, 215, 220. Jeff Wilson scoring those touchdowns. So I don't be surprised if you're banking on these other two guys, that Jeff Wilson might be a little bit of a thorn in your side. And there's, a touchdown gets you in the lineup in best ball. So I don't think it's crazy taking him late either.
No, I agree with you there 100%. All right, let's take a look when it comes to the betting odds here for this one. Looking at their win total at 9.5. Are we going over or under?
That one's tough, man. Because they're set the same, it's like you look around this division. I think the Bills still have the edge on this team, which if they're at 10.5, this team's 9.5, and then you got Aaron Rodgers floating around. I don't know. That's one I'm just staying away. I don't like betting the over or the under there. So I don't know if you lean one way or another, but to me, I don't feel a need to take action on either side on that one. I think it's a good line.
It is a good line. I would lean probably the over, just kind of based on what they did last year while missing pieces there. With missing weeks without without Tua. So I would lean the over. I think this is a really good team. They have a good defense. They have a coach that, at least for now, seems to get it, which is sometimes just half the battle in the NFL, as we saw what happened with Denver last year. If you have a coach that is completely out of the program, then you're going to be putting yourself in some tough situations. So Miami with McDaniel, I like that a lot. And this offense is just going to put up points. And I don't know if there are many teams on their schedule. I know they have a tough schedule, but that can outpace them consistently enough. I'm going to go the over 9.5 here, plus 300 to win the division.
That's what I like. So we like this team, right? Like that's the thing is I like the team, and if I had to pick over under, I would pick over, but I just don't like the line.
Sure.
Right? Plus 300 to win the division, I like it. Plus Tua, sprinkle a little on Tua, plus 2,000 to win MVP. I don't think that's crazy either. The one that would be so interesting if it wasn't for another narrative is Tua plus 2,000 to win comeback player of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because we think that he's eligible for it. He had the issues, right? They want to not necessarily want to put the spotlight on the concussions, but you want to see a guy come back and show like, hey, you know what? Like it's not a huge deal. You can still play football, right? That would be big. The problem is, John, there's another narrative there. The favorite to win comeback player of the year. Do you know what it is?
Is it Damar Hamlin?
It's Damar Hamlin. It's like minus 500. And all he has to do
is play.
Right? Like he doesn't even have to be good, to be honest. And I think, you know what? That if he comes back and plays, he should win that award.
He's been cleared. He's been cleared to play.
He's cleared to play. He's going to come back and play. And he doesn't even have to play particularly well to win the award. So I think it's tough to lay the money on that. But I mean, especially given how difficult that award is in general, you know.
Right.
So but yeah, that's holding me back from placing it.
Then we got plus 2,200 to win the Super Bowl is your Miami Super Bowl odds there. So I mean, if you think they can win the division, you might as well throw a nickel down on them to win the Super Bowl too, you know?
Exactly. Honestly, yeah. If you think they're going to win the division, you put that down. And then what you do is, and this is the part that I think, people forget about, is that once you have that ticket at plus 2,200 and you get to the Super Bowl, it's so easy. You can start hedging, right? Like you can start betting a little bit.
Sometimes they give you a cash out option too on those
cash outs. Yeah. So you're not that bet. You shouldn't look at it as they either win the Super Bowl or I lose, because you could make $1,000 just because they make it to the AFC Championship game. Like if they're going up against the Chiefs, you can just say, I'm going to take $1,000 here, you know? So, there's other ways to play it than just say, hey, all or nothing.
Let's move on here to the final team here, maybe the biggest mover this offseason in this division. The New York Jets finished last year at 7-10, but they went ahead and traded for Aaron Rodgers. Let go of Mike White. He now finds himself there in Miami as the backup quarterback. They drafted a defensive end there, Will McDonald, to bolster their defense. Vegas also has them with a 9.5 win total at minus 130. Their odds to win the AFC East are better than the Miami Dolphins at plus 280, and their odds to win the Super Bowl are plus 1,800. Aaron Rodgers comes to New York, and many people are thinking the Jets are going to be flying high this year, Coop.
That's the Aaron Rodgers treatment right there. I mean, look at that. Can you just picture what the odds would be for this team without him there? I mean, they were kind of baked in before he even moved there, right? But it's like they just jump ahead of the Dolphins. The Dolphins have been spending years. They tanked to get Tua. They let all these guys leave. They traded for Tyreek Hill. They did all this work. Turns out all you needed to do was to increase your odds, would just get Aaron Rodgers, right? Mm-hmm. Just bring him in. There you go. So
trade for a 40-year-old quarterback. That was the secret.
And let him bring all his friends. So kind of interesting there. Yeah, they traded away Elijah Moore to make room for Allen Lazard and these guys. I'll tell you what, if it works, it's spectacular, right? Worked for the Buccaneers. They brought in Brady, won. Worked for the Rams. They brought in Stafford, won. If it doesn't work, then you get kind of crushed a bit. Like, I mean, Broncos fans are feeling it right now. And they brought in a 33-year-old quarterback, not a 39-year-old quarterback, right? Like Russell Wilson's 34 now, but like they're getting crushed. So, and it hurts. And if your team isn't good and Elijah Moore is good, now you're like, wait a second, we traded our second round pick away to make room for Allen Lazard. And this, it can
make Aaron Rodgers happy,
He can bring great pain, I'll tell you. But that said, Aaron Rodgers, phenomenal player, back-to-back MVP, multiple. Is he 3-time MVP and he's been back-to-back before? Is
Yeah.
that what? Yeah. So I mean, it's hard to go away from the options here. The question when it comes to fantasy football, there's a number of questions here. I mean, it really is up in the air. The first one, of course, you run into is Garrett Wilson. Is he a first round pick or is he a second round pick? Because he's creeping into that first round. I've seen him go 10, 11, 12. Oftentimes he goes at the very beginning of the second, but you got to start asking yourself, do you have my dog Lufa seems to like him
I was gonna
at
say
the
Luca
second.
in on Garrett Wilson this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, are you taking Wilson? Like, if you're picking at 10, that's the hot spot because it's like, are you taking him there or are you waiting and just if he's there on the way back, you take him, but otherwise you don't. Because
So
that's you gotta make that call.
I have one share of Garrett Wilson so far in best ball. If I've been in sort of that end of first round spot, and Austin Eckler's been taken already, because generally that's where I go with that pick is Eckler. It's CD Lamb for me. That's the guy that I like at that end of the first round swing play. But Garrett Wilson's a super intriguing cat because I mean, look at the rookie year that he just had: 83 catches, 1,100 yards, and 4 touchdowns with Zach Wilson and Mike White as his quarterbacks. I mean, even if I think Aaron Rodgers is on the decline, he is miles better than those two guys throwing the football. So you could see Garrett Wilson just purely by better quarterback play in year 2 be a 1,400, 1,500 yard receiver. So I do like Garrett Wilson here. I'm just a little bit more bullish on CD Lamb because he's coming off of a 1,300 yard season, missing Dak Prescott for a lot of that year as well. And I know he's an established top end receiver, but I'm good with either of those two guys if they're down there. And Wilson, probably, like you said, he's starting to move up boards a little bit. Once we start getting more of those like camp highlights of Aaron Rodgers throwing into buckets, and people are like, oh, right, Garrett Wilson's here, you'll probably start to see him move up a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I saw one highlight of him making a great throw, slow-mo, the whole deal, and I was like, "Oh, is that Garrett Wilson?" And then when I looked closely, it was actually Malik Taylor, another guy he brought over from the Packers. So that's what scares me a little. I will say this for Dynasty, gotta love it. I mean, you pull up the guys that had that target share and over 1,000 yards as a rookie, not a whole lot of misses on that list, and it's literally like Jerry Rice and Randy Moss and Justin Jefferson. So like, pretty good list to be on. Let me just ask you real quick before we move on to another player. We like Eckler. We both do. We like CeeDee Lamb. I personally like Jonathan Taylor over him as well. Are you taking Taylor there or are you taking Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, when I've been end of first round, I've actually gone the heavy RB, assuming that CeeDee Lamb's been off the board. If Eckler's there, I have a lot of teams that are Eckler, Taylor, Eckler, Barkley.
Yeah.
Which is either going to be great for me this year or it's not going to work out. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if there's a bigger Austin Eckler guy than me, that's self-proclaimed at least. I took Eckler first overall last year.
Won a lot of money last year.
So
won a lot of leagues.
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson. So I'm taking Garrett Wilson over Amon-Ra St. Brown. I guess then the real question:
is it Waddle or Wilson? Is that the question then for you?
What you say?
Waddle or Wilson, probably the next.
No. I still take Wilson, even as a Waddle guy. I have Waddle ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I just there is something to be said about a guy with unlimited ceiling as the number one target now. Like Tyreek Hill probably still is the number one target.
Yeah.
But it's actually Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams. That's the other one I wanted to ask you about.
I mean, definitely Wilson now because we don't even know what's going on with the quarterback. It might not even be Garoppolo anymore, and I wasn't in love with Garoppolo as the QB there either.
That's what I'm saying, man. Yeah. So I'm with you there. Let's go through some of these other guys. So the next guy off the board, another one kind of up in the air, Breece Hall going off ADP 30.
I have a lot of Breece Hall too.
RB 11. Yeah. And
I'm not. Again, we're talking from a best ball standpoint at this point, so it's kind of like it's a different strategy to think about because, like, even if Breece Hall gets off to a slow start, the expectations are that he's going to be very ready to go 3 weeks into the year. They're going to work him in, and then he's this 3-down back in an offense that's expected to score a lot of points. So I like Breece Hall a lot in drafts. Reports are that he's good. He's already out there running around, So I like Breece Hall a lot.
Yeah. After that, you got Allen Lazard going off pick 109, wide receiver 51. And then you can, at the very end of your drafts, in best ball at least, and honestly, most drafts aren't 18 rounds. So you look at Tyler Conklin, ADP 189. That's around like 16, 17. Like
Mhm.
a lot of drafts don't even go that far. So then you can take stabs on Conklin, Mecole Hardman. Are you picking, Corey Davis, the rookie, Izzy? Are you taking any of those guys? I'm personally, it's Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, maybe Rodgers. And if in some world end up with Rodgers, maybe I also grab Lazard and just go for that like touchdown stack. But are you
Yeah,
are you taking anybody else?
I
Conklin, any of these guys?
I have some one-off shares of Lazard just for the red zone targets for him
I
in
thought you were
Green
gonna say
Bay.
Conklin, dude, and I was
No,
gonna
no,
I
no,
would
no.
have to I would have to cut my camera.
No, I have some one-off shares of Lazard just for the red zone targets he's received in Green Bay from Aaron Rodgers. That could just be a guy that he looks for. So Lazard for me is fine as like a wide receiver 4, 5, 6, something like that, depending on how heavy you're going in drafts there. And to me, he also just kind of pops up in a spot where the way I've been drafting a lot of teams, yeah, I just kind of find myself being like, all right, he's probably the best odds to score at this point for a pop week in best ball. So in seasonal, he's fine. He's probably going to be a good bench guy, wide receiver 4 on seasonal leagues as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, so, before we wrap this up, let's hit betting, and
yep,
then, we'll give some shout outs at the end. Super
over
Bowl
under,
odds. Yeah, you wanna
over
hit them?
yeah, over under 9.5. What do you think?
Yeah, this one, to me, it's too volatile I don't really like betting the Super Bowl. I don't like betting the over under or the division. The one I would consider is Aaron Rodgers MVP. That's the one where, hey, if you can go to this team, the Jets, like all over the place nightmare team, and do all the things because right, if you win the division, that takes Josh Allen off the board
Right,
for Super Bowl for MVP, right?
most
So
likely.
realistically, it does. It's like so if he's playing at that level, then I just can't see a world where they win the division and Josh Allen's the MVP. Like
Mhm.
it's then Patrick Mahomes obviously in the mix, Joe Burrow, but like
Right.
I'd rather just bet that this guy's amazing because he has the narrative behind him that says this team was bad. He showed up. Now they're good. A clear measure of valuableness, right?
Yeah.
Or valuability or whatever word you want to use there. I'm just making them up. But like that, the narrative is everything there. So for me, that's the one I'm going to bet if I'm going to bet any of them. Unless you want to bet under for wins and just bet that it's a total nightmare, which would be hilarious,
I
right?
mean, yeah. Listen, I always question how much football Aaron Rodgers wants to play, and this is such a tough division. If they go out there and they lose, a couple to the Bills and the Dolphins, and now they're third in the division and out of the playoffs, like does Aaron Rodgers said, like, well, we tried, like I'll see y'all later. Here you go,
Yeah.
Zach Wilson. Like,
Listen, I
so
don't want to be around anymore.
yeah,
I mean,
we
yeah, he
tried
is
it.
that
I got out of Green Bay, so
he's that kind of guy that would say, I earned it. And within the trade, there are some conditions, that so he's not the only one thinking about this. There are conditions in the trade that revert some of those picks if he doesn't play another year or he
right,
retires. So it's not like that's completely off the table.
yeah.
So yeah,
But
I'm there.
I'm a believer in Aaron Rodgers being that like stick it to you guy as well.
There you go.
Those are great quarterbacks out there that can go to that next level to prove that they got something left in them. And I do think Aaron Rodgers can get there. So, guys, that's our look at the AFC East. We're going to be going division by division here over the next couple of weeks, touching upon every division there up until basically August. So, strap in, stick with us here at the Quick Out Fantasy Football Show. Get with us at Fantasy Alarm. Again, go to fantasyalarm.com/all-pro. Promo code NFL50 will save you 50% off the first 6 months. That's $19.98 a month for the first 6 months. That gives you all access to everything we do on site and gets you into our premium Discord channel as well. We can always find Coop in his Coop's Corner and our NFL Best Ball channels, giving everybody the advice that they need to dominate their drafts. Coop, any final words for the people tuning in today?
Yeah, draft guide next week, next Thursday. Living draft guide. So it goes out. You can get access and get all the early articles, early rankings. And then as we drop new ones, you get all those too. So might as well get in early. That's dropping next Thursday, baby. Let's go.
Amen. Let's go talk to you guys all next week. Good luck.